Hey everyone, excited to be back for this week's edition of Frequently Asked Questions for Commercial Real Estate. In today's video, what I want to do is talk about a term that recently came up that I thought would be beneficial to discuss on this channel because I'm not sure it's one that we've had a big deep dive into, and that is operational pass-throughs. So operating expense pass-throughs in a lease agreement. So in today's video, we're going to explain what exactly that is, and we're going to share some of the things you need to consider as you're going through the lease negotiation process to ensure that you yourself as a tenant are protected when it comes to operating expenses. Now, before I end this video, I'd greatly appreciate it if you can like and subscribe to this channel. It really does help with the YouTube algorithm and ensures more and more people can hear this message and learn about the many facets of commercial real estate. So now you've done that, go ahead and like and subscribe below. Let's go ahead and dive into this episode. All right, so the term we're defining today is operating expense pass-throughs. So what exactly does that mean? It means the cost that a landlord passes through to a tenant in addition to the base rent. So typically when you're looking at a triple net lease agreement and you're in a multi-tenant retail center, you would be quoted a base rate, right? Let's say it's $20 a foot. And then you'll also be quoted a CAM charge, right? Or common area maintenance charge, or a triple net charge that comprises of the operating expenses of the property that you would be responsible for paying your pro rata share of. So as an example, this triple net expense, maybe it's like $4 or $5 or maybe more depending on your market. And that's what you're going to pay in addition to the base rent, typically on a monthly basis. Sometimes landlords will collect it at the end of the year or on a quarterly basis. It really is up to the landlord, but this is an expense that a lot of tenants don't really consider as they're going through that leasing process. Now, what's important to note is what exactly is calculated within that final number. So when you think of triple net expenses or CAM expenses, the most common expenses that are associated with that number are property taxes, building insurance premiums. You're talking about common area maintenance expenses. So that may be lighting, parking lot repair, trash removal, snow removal, any type of cleaning of the common areas. It may be utilities if there's shared utilities. A lot of times when you have, let's say, a shopping center and there are, lights that illuminate the parking lot, that would be a shared expense. And then sometimes you would factor in capital repairs. So maybe a roof that covers the entire center. Sometimes you'll see it in the lease agreement where they will allocate a percentage of the total replacement cost over a period of time. So let's say that the roof's 20 years warranty. So maybe they factor in each year as a line item on the expenses to say, well, we're going to charge the whole tenant base 1/20th of what the cost of replacement would be. And that's so that in the future, once we need to replace the roof, we have the funds available to do so. And then also you have management fees and other administrative costs that are typically factored in there. So that's typically what you'll see as far as a breakdown of what the operating expenses are and ultimately what is passed through to you as a potential tenant. Now, where the negotiation comes into play is that not all of those operating expenses are ones that maybe you yourself as a tenant want to be responsible for paying. A lot of times you'll see tenants push back on major capital expenditures. So roof, if there's a boiler system that covers the entire property, again, these can be sometimes negotiated against or not necessarily against, but can be negotiated such that you yourself as a tenant don't have to bear any type of additional cost when it comes to modifying or replacing these major components of the structure. Along with that, there's different ways to minimize the impact of some of these operating expenses over a period of time. Some of the more common approaches are an expense stop. So, typically what you'll say is that you can say, well, like Mr. Landlord, Mrs. Landlord, we're going to have a certain dollar figure that is allocated towards the maintenance and operation of the center, and anything above that amount, then the tenants would pay for the delta. So sometimes you can negotiate an expense stop that is a higher expense stop, such that that the operating expenses won't eclipse that number or won't eclipse that number for some time, and therefore the landlord would be responsible for covering most of the operating expenses thereafter, or at least maintaining that the charge that they're charging you of, let's say $4 a foot or $5 a foot in this example. It wouldn't jump to, let's say, $6 or $7 a foot overnight. So this is just one example. Along with that, you could have a cap on increases. This is what I see more commonly, and this is actually probably not a bad idea in a lot of cases to try to negotiate a cap on increases because, let's say in this case there's a triple net charge of $4 or $5 a foot. Well, in our market, and I'm sure it's the same in a lot of other markets, when that property sells, then that property is reassessed at a new value. So let's say that you are at a multi-tenant center where the owner has owned the property for a long period of time. Maybe that assessed value is suppressed because there hasn't been a liquidation event or a sale that would showcase what the actual market value is. And for the most part, municipalities try to keep up with reassessments of properties to ensure there's not this huge delta. But there can be times where landlords fight to keep the assessed value low, and in the scenario where you sell the landlord sells the property, it's not an uncommon scenario to where the assessed value doubles in a year or maybe more than doubles. So as a tenant, if you don't have a cap on expenses on your as it pertains to the pass-throughs, you could see the triple net charges for your space significantly increase. I've seen situations where the triple net charges almost doubled from year over year because of a sale. So these are the types of things you really need to consider as you're going through the leasing process. And typically when I work with a relatively, typically if it's a large landlord and they have a lot of their T's crossed and I's dotted when it comes to CAM reconciliation, sometimes being able to review the CAM statement before finalizing signatures and moving forward with the property can be helpful because it gives you an idea of how they break down their expenses and how they allocate different expenses to tenants. So these are just some things to consider. Again, operating pass-throughs are costs that landlords pass through to tenants. Not all operating pass-throughs are ones that tenants would want to pay or, can maybe negotiate some of those pass-throughs to not be considered, or maybe there's a cap on the expenses affiliated with some of those pass-throughs. And those are some ways that you can mitigate the downside risk as a tenant and ultimately have the best experience at the center or the space you ultimately decide to lease. So hopefully you gain some value from this video. Obviously, I greatly appreciate all the support that you guys have shown me with this YouTube channel. If you guys like this channel, please like and subscribe. It makes a huge impact on our ability to reach a broader audience, and we obviously greatly appreciate the support. Along with that, I am a commercial broker, and I'm licensed here in Kentucky and also in Indiana. So if you guys are looking for commercial property in any of those markets, feel free to reach out to me. My number is 502-536-7315, or you can reach me via email at Raphael@sumcg.com. Thanks again so much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time.